Listen to me closely for the next 10 seconds because this might change how you love forever. If loving people is slowly draining you, if your heart feels tired instead of full, you're not broken. You're just giving without boundaries. And that pain, it's trying to teach you something. I want to say something that may sting a little, but truth often does. You can love people deeply and still refuse to abandon yourself. Those two things are not enemies. They were never meant to be. So many of us were taught that love means fixing, saving, explaining, tolerating, enduring. We learned that if we just try harder, speak softer, bend more, maybe one day they'll meet us where we stand. But here's the hard truth. Loving someone does not give you the power to change who they are or the responsibility to shrink so they feel comfortable. Loving people where they are means seeing them clearly, not through hope, not through fantasy, not through who they could be if they finally understood you. It means saying, this is who you are right now, and letting that reality land in your body without denial. And here's where we lose ourselves. We confuse compassion with self-erasure. We stay quiet when something hurts. We stay present when our soul is screaming to leave. We call it patience, but it's fear wearing a kind mask. Real love does not require self-betrayal. And if being close to someone costs you your peace, your voice, or your worth, that's not love asking for more. That's your boundaries begging to be honored. And this is where the real work begins. I need you to understand this part because it changes everything. Loving people where they are does not mean you stay where they leave you. It means you stop demanding that they become someone else just so you don't have to feel disappointed. That's not cruelty. That's emotional maturity. Most of us don't struggle with loving others. We struggle with accepting limits. We struggle with the moment we realize this is all they can give. And instead of grieving that truth, we negotiate with it. We overfunction. We explain ourselves one more time. We stay hopeful in places where hope has quietly expired. Here's the painful reality. When you expect more from someone than they are capable of offering, you don't get closeness, you get resentment. And resentment doesn't arrive loud, it seeps in slowly. It hardens your chest. It makes your kindness feel heavy instead of free. Loving people where they are means releasing the fantasy version of them. The one who finally listens. The one who finally chooses you without being asked. The one who suddenly becomes emotionally available because you love them well enough. That version might feel real, but it's a story your fear tells to avoid letting go. And listen, acceptance is not approval. You can accept that someone cannot meet you emotionally and still decide that you need more. You can say, I see you, without saying, I'll sacrifice myself to stay. This is the moment many people miss. Boundaries are not punishments. They are clarity. They are the line where love stops being self-harm. When you stop trying to pull people toward you, you finally see whether they were ever walking in your direction at all. And that truth, while heartbreaking, is also incredibly freeing. Let me slow this down because this is where guilt sneaks in. The moment you stop over giving, you start wondering, am I being selfish? And I want to be very clear, self-respect often feels like selfishness to people who benefited from your self-neglect. You were conditioned to believe that being good meant being endlessly available. That being loving meant absorbing discomfort so others wouldn't have to. So when you begin to honor your limits, your nervous system panics. It mistakes boundaries for abandonment. It tells you that you're doing something wrong. But here's the truth that changes everything. You are not required to carry what someone else refuses to heal. You can hold empathy without holding responsibility for their emotional growth. That work belongs to them. Loving people where they are requires emotional courage. It means sitting with the discomfort of letting someone feel the consequences of their choices instead of rescuing them. And yes, that can feel brutal at first. But rescuing doesn't build connection. It builds dependence and quiet resentment. Pay attention to your body. When you're around someone you're over functioning for, your shoulders tense, your breath shortens, your words become careful instead of honest. That's not intuition, failing you. That's wisdom trying to get your attention. You don't lose yourself all at once. You lose yourself in tiny moments of silence, in swallowed truths, in staying when something inside you is begging to be named. Loving someone where they are means you stop fighting reality, and when you stop fighting reality, you finally have the energy to choose yourself without cruelty, without apology, without collapse. This is not about hardening your heart. It's about keeping it intact. I want to talk about grief, because no one warns you about this part. When you truly love people where they are, you grieve who you hoped they would become with you. And that grief is real. It's heavy. It deserves space. We don't just mourn people. We mourn futures, conversations that never happen, safety that never arrives, love that stays just out of reach. And instead of honoring that loss, we shame ourselves for wanting more. We call ourselves needy, too much, unreasonable. But longing is not a flaw. It's information. Here's the hard moment. Accepting someone as they are often means accepting that they cannot love you the way you need. And that realization can crack your chest open, because love alone doesn't create compatibility. Effort doesn't guarantee intimacy, and empathy doesn't magically turn into emotional availability. So many of us stay stuck because we confuse patience with hope. We say, they're trying, when what we really mean is, I'm still waiting. And waiting can slowly hollow you out. Loving people where they are does not mean you deny your own needs. It means you stop asking the wrong person to meet them. That shift is painful, but it's also profoundly respectful to them and to you. You don't need to vilify anyone to move on emotionally. You can honor the love you felt and still choose distance. You can say, this hurts, without saying, this is wrong. Grief is not proof that you failed at love. It's proof that you loved honestly. And once you let yourself feel that grief, without rushing, without self-blame, you make room for something stronger than hope. You make room for truth. Now listen carefully, because this is where power quietly returns to you. When you stop trying to earn love, you finally begin to experience it. So many of us learn to perform for connection. We became agreeable, understanding, endlessly patient. We learned how to read the room, soften our needs, anticipate emotional weather before it changed, and we called that love. But what it really was survival. Loving people where they are means you stop auditioning for their acceptance. You stop proving your worth through endurance. You stop twisting yourself into someone easier to stay with. Because love that requires you to disappear is not love. It's attachment fueled by fear. Here's the shift. You don't need to be chosen at the cost of your authenticity. You don't need to be convenient to be worthy. The right connections don't demand less of you. They invite more truth from you. When you stop chasing emotional availability, something remarkable happens. You become emotionally available to yourself. You start noticing when something feels off instead of rationalizing it away. You start trusting your discomfort instead of explaining it into silence. This is not about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming honest. Honest about what nourishes you. Honest about what depletes you. Honest about the difference between love that feels steady and love that feels like anxiety. And here's the quiet miracle: when you show up as yourself without over-functioning, the relationships that remain become safer, more mutual, more real. And the ones that fade, they were never sustainable to begin with. You don't lose people by being real. You lose people by pretending. And what stays when you stop pretending, that's where your life begins to feel like home. I want to name something we rarely talk about: anger. Not the explosive kind, but the quiet, buried anger that lives in people who are always understanding. The kind that builds when you keep loving people where they are while abandoning where you are. That anger doesn't mean you're unkind. It means a boundary has been crossed too many times without being spoken. It means your nervous system has been working overtime to protect you while your voice stayed silent. When you ignore that anger, it doesn't disappear. It turns inward. It becomes exhaustion. It becomes numbness. It becomes that moment when you realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. Loving people where they are requires radical honesty with yourself first. You have to ask, what am I tolerating that is costing me my aliveness? And then you have to be brave enough to listen to the answer. Here's what boundaries really do. They tell the truth early. They prevent resentment from doing it later. And yes, setting them can feel terrifying, especially if your love was always conditional on being easy to be with. But healthy love does not punish clarity. It responds to it. Some people will step closer when you honor yourself. Others will step away. That is not a failure. It's information. It tells you who is connected to you and who is connected to your compliance. You are allowed to change the rules of how people access you. You are allowed to say, this no longer works for me, without providing a defense or a dissertation. Loving people where they are sometimes means loving them from a distance, not to hurt them, but to finally protect yourself. And protection, when done with integrity, is an act of deep, mature love. There is a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you realize you've outgrown a dynamic. Nothing explodes. No one becomes the villain. You just feel it in your body. The conversations don't land the same. The effort feels one-sided. The silence between you grows heavier than the words. This is where many people panic, because outgrowing someone feels like betrayal when you were taught that loyalty means staying the same forever. But growth is not abandonment. It's honesty. Loving people where they are sometimes means accepting that you are no longer where you used to be. And that can be incredibly lonely, because change often creates distance before it creates clarity. Here's what I need you to hear. You are not wrong for wanting relationships that feel mutual, grounded, and emotionally safe. You are not demanding too much. You are just no longer willing to accept too little. When you begin to stand in your truth, you stop chasing connection and start attracting alignment. And alignment doesn't need convincing. It doesn't need you to shrink or translate your feelings into something more digestible. Some people will tell you that you've changed, as if that's an accusation. But what they really mean is that you've stopped being available in the ways that benefited them. Let them feel that loss. It is not yours to fix. Outgrowing people does not erase the love that was real. It simply acknowledges that love must evolve or be released with integrity. You don't need to announce this shift. You don't need permission. The quiet consistency of honoring yourself will speak louder than any explanation ever could. And the more you trust that inner knowing, the less you will confuse intensity with intimacy. What remains will be slower, softer, truer. And for the first time, you won't feel like you're leaving yourself behind to keep someone else close. Let me tell you what real self-trust looks like, because this is where everything stabilizes. It's not loud confidence. It's the quiet decision to believe your experience without asking for permission. When you learn to love people where they are without losing yourself, you stop arguing with your own reality. You stop saying, maybe I'm too sensitive when something hurts. You stop explaining away patterns that keep repeating. You start calling things what they are, gently, but honestly. Self-trust means you no longer need closure from people who lack the capacity to give it. You don't wait for them to understand you in order to move forward. You don't need their agreement to validate your pain. And this is you stop mistaking emotional intensity for emotional depth. Chemistry without consistency stops feeling romantic and starts feeling exhausting. You begin to crave steadiness over sparks, safety over chaos, presence over promises. Loving people where they are also means letting go of the need to be remembered as good. You might be misunderstood. You might be labeled distant, cold, or changed. But being misunderstood is often the cost of being true. You don't harden, you refine. You learn that saying no doesn't make you less loving. It makes your yes more honest. You learn that walking away from what diminishes, you create space for what can finally meet you. And here's the quiet reward. Peace stops being something you chase. It becomes something you protect. You no longer need to explain your worth. You embody it. You no longer negotiate your boundaries. You live them. When you trust yourself, You stop asking, am I allowed to need this? You already know the answer, and from that knowing, love becomes cleaner, stronger, safer. And so do you. There is a freedom that comes when you stop managing other people's emotions. When you realize that disappointment is not a danger, it's a natural response to unmet expectations, and it is not your job to protect everyone from it at the expense of your own truth. For so long, you've been carrying the emotional weight of the room, softening your words, timing your honesty, diluting your needs so no one feels uncomfortable. And that constant self-monitoring has cost you something precious, your ease. Loving people where they are means releasing the role of emotional caretaker. It means allowing others to have their reactions without rushing in to fix, soothe, or explain. Their feelings belong to them. Yours belong to you. This is where many people feel exposed. Because when you stop over-explaining, silence enters. And silence can be terrifying if you were taught that connection must be constantly maintained to survive. But real connection doesn't collapse under honesty. It clarifies. Some people will lean in when you stop performing. Others will drift when they can no longer access you through guilt or obligation. Again, this is not cruelty. It's discernment. You begin to understand that love is not proven through suffering. It's revealed through respect. And respect shows up when your boundaries are met without argument. This is the shift from emotional survival to emotional adulthood, from chaos to choice, from attachment to alignment. You don't need to convince anyone to treat you well. You notice who already does. And the relationships that grow from this place, they feel lighter, more reciprocal, more grounded in reality instead of fear. You finally understand that loving people where they are doesn't mean staying stuck with them. It means standing firmly in who you are without apology. And from that place, love stops being something you lose yourself in. It becomes something you stand inside of whole. Now, let me leave you with this truth, the one that will change the way you see love forever. Loving people where they are is not a practice in compromise. It is a practice in courage. It's choosing to meet someone fully, without illusions, and without sacrificing your own heartbeat. It's choosing truth over comfort. It's choosing yourself over the habit of people pleasing. The reality is that some people will never rise to the level of care you can offer. Some will never recognize your worth, no matter how patiently, gently, or fully you love them. And that's okay. Their inability to meet you does not diminish your capacity to love. It simply clarifies where your energy belongs. You don't have to shrink. You don't have to explain endlessly. You don't have to disappear. Boundaries are not walls. They are bridges to authenticity. They protect your soul while still leaving space for connection. And here's the most beautiful part. When you honor yourself in this way, you invite others to do the same. You teach people how to love you by showing them how you love yourself. You become a beacon of honesty, strength, and gentle courage. So carry this forward. Love without illusion, love without surrendering your essence, love without losing your voice. And know that real love, deep, sustaining, life-giving love, thrives in the space where respect, truth, and authenticity live together. Stand tall, speak clearly, love fiercely, and never forget the most radical, transformative love begins with you. Because when you finally love yourself this way, everything else falls into place.